Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Brian's Horror Corner, or welcome if you are new to my channel. Glad to have you here. So, a couple things before we get started with today's horror movie review. Obviously, I was gone for the last week. That's why you didn't see any videos drop for about 7 days here. Um, and on the back end of my vacation, I picked up a head cold, which you can probably hear in my voice. So if I have to blow my nose or cough or sniffle, that's why. I apologize up front if I have to do any of those things. My vacation was good though, minus the cold that I got. But yeah, with that being said, we're gonna jump back into the rest of the horror movies from 1980 as part of my overall 1980s horror series, an ongoing series on my channel. This is just the first part out of 10, of course, finishing up the third and final week here. They're not the third 3 months, but the final week of 1980 specifically. So, the movie that we're going to review today is one that I had some expectation for. I was from my Severin collection, my Blu ray Severin collection, and that movie is Anthropophagous, which obviously you can see I have the black case here on Blu ray from Severin. Um, I did watch a couple of the documentaries on the special features there. I don't know how well you guys can see that, but um, Anthropophagous. I didn't know too much about this movie, but it was an Italian horror movie from 1980, so I assumed that, ooh, good gore, and but I didn't know much about the story or exactly what it was about. So um, I was hoping for the best, and did I get it? Well, let's go ahead and get into my review here for Anthropophagus. So, Anthropophagus, which is also known as Anthropophagus the Beast, or the Savage Island, or the Grim Reaper, is a 1980 Italian horror film directed by Joe D'Amato, who is also the co-writer along with George Eastman. Eastman also stars as the cannibal. The film also features, and I'm going to butcher a lot of these names: Tisa Farrow, Zora Kurova, uh, Savioria Vallone, Serena Grandi, and Margaret Mazzanatini, and Mark Bowden or Baden. So basically, the movie opens with a pair of Germans visiting a remote Greek island who go to a beach and are slaughtered by someone who emerges from the ocean. Five travelers are preparing to tour the islands and are joined by Julie, who asks for a ride to an island some of her friends live on. The only one who objects to the detour to this island, which Julie explains has only a few permanent residents and only sees tourists a few months out of the year, is Carol, whose tarot cards, the Tarocco uh, Pimentis convince her something bad will happen if they go. The group sails to the island anyway, while disembarking. The pregnant Maggie hurts her ankle, so she stays behind on the boat with its owner. A man attacks the ship, ripping the sailor's head off and abducting Maggie. The others explore the island's town, discovering it in disarray and abandoned, except for an elusive woman in black who writes "Go away" on a dusty window. A rotting corpse that appears to have been cannibalized is uncovered in a house, prompting everyone to rush back to the boat, which is adrift. With no other options, the group goes to the house owned by Julie's friends, where they find the family's blind daughter, Henriette. After wounding Daniel in a panic, Henriette is calmed down and rants about there being a madman who smells of blood prowling the island. So yeah, that's the setup and the premise for the 1980 Joe D'Amato film Anthropophagus. As far as the cast goes, again, we have Tisa Farrow as Julie, uh, Saverio Vallone as Andy, Serena Grandi as Maggie, Margaret Mazzantini as Henriette, Mark Bodden as Daniel, Bob Larson as Arnold, Rubina Ray as Ruth Wortman, and George Eastman as Klaus Wortman. So yeah, that's the setup, the premise, and the cast for Anthropophagus. Um, I wasn't overly crazy about this movie, if I'm being honest with you. Now, obviously, like a lot of these movies, it was a first time watch for me, so I definitely want to watch it again. But I don't know. It just didn't work for me on a lot of different levels. Although there are good things about it. So let's start with that and the things that I enjoyed about the film. Um, I think the look of Klaus or the Anthropophagus was really pretty effective, kind of creepy and decrepit looking, like you would expect once the story unfolds and you kind of get to know how this killer came to be and who he was. So I thought that was good. The overall makeup effects and gore effects are also pretty good here on the dead decomposing bodies that have been cannibalized, along with the blood and gore effects from cannibals eating those kind of type of effects. I thought they were all really solid, frankly. I enjoyed the score in this movie, which is kind of a typical Italian horror score combined with kind of a tension-filled synthesizer sound, which is kind of a typical. Which, oh wait a minute, where it works well. I thought overall for this movie and what they were going for. So I did like the score here. There are some really memorable scenes that stand out in the movie. There's three specifically that I'm going to call out, like when Henriette is first introduced, the look and the visuals of that character is pretty effective. Also, the first time we see Klaus the Anthropophagus, that works. Of course, you have the fetus scene where the pregnant woman is strangled to death and the fetus is ripped out of her and eaten by the Anthropophagus. Pretty disturbing there. And then the final end scene where Klaus is stabbed in the stomach as and his intestines spill out and he ends up eating them at like the last thing that he does. That was pretty interesting, disturbing but effective overall. Um, and yeah, I have to say, overall, I think this is a pretty well shot movie with some good set pieces and settings overall, like the catacombs with all the skulls, this large house that they're in for the majority of the movie, and then just the overall island setting, I think works well too, very isolated. So there are definitely good things about Anthropophagus that I really liked. So those are my pros for the movie. Getting into cons, frankly, I had a difficult time getting engaged with the story or any of the characters in this movie. It just kind of feels like a typical run of the mill people trapped on an island with a madman killing people. That's not executed all that well, frankly. Um, yeah, I don't know. I had a hard time getting into, and I don't think it's just because I was sick. I just the story unfolds. So something happens initially in the film, which is kind of action packed and exciting. But then for like 30 to 45 minutes, it's very slow paced with a lot of people walking around and exploring, and not really much happens. And so it was just really hard to get into. The acting and the dubbing are pretty bad here, even for an Italian movie. Just wasn't quite buying what they were selling there. There is some pretty rough written dialogue that these actors and characters really don't make work either. And as I said, after an initial action packed scene, which I thought was good in the first 10 minutes or so, there is about 30 to 45 minutes of not much happening where characters are just wandering around this island, this house, and having some uninteresting drama filled moments between the characters. I was kind of bored, frankly. And being an Italian horror film by Joe D'Amato, I wasn't expecting that. So that was kind of disappointing. The reveal of the killer and how he came to be wasn't overly exciting or interesting, kind of predictable, and it has an exposition filled flashback scene that kind of explains it all. It wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen, but again, I guess I had too high of expectations for this movie. And then my final con is there is a cat jump scene, or where a cat jumps out as a cheap jump scare, which, man, there's so many horror movies that do that. It's old, it's cheap, and I really wish they would stop doing that. But they really did it a lot back in the 70s and 80s. So I'm sure I'm going to see it a lot more in movies that I watch. But yeah, it's just I'm kind of done with the whole cat jumping out, cheap jump scare kind of a trope that they tend to use in horror movies. So I had to throw that in there. But I don't know, guys. Overall, this movie's fine. I'm glad to have it, I guess, in my Severin collection Blu-ray. I definitely want to give it a rewatch at some point, but for a first time watch, I wasn't overly impressed. I think mostly because of the story and the characters. There's nothing interesting about the characters, and I just couldn't really get into the story with the structure or the way that everything unfolds here. But I'm going to give this movie a 6.5 out of 10. I think it's okay. We'll see on upon rewatch if it goes up or even down. Hopefully, it doesn't go down. But 6.5 out of 10 for Anthropophagous from 1980 by Joe D'Amato. Go ahead and comment down below your guys' thoughts on this movie if you've seen it. Do you like it more than I do? Less? Why not? Please comment down below. Please subscribe to my channel, hit the little notification bell, and like this video so you don't miss any of my upcoming reviews for this series, which there should be three left, plus my definitive top 15 horror movies for 1980 at the very end of July here. But you also don't want to miss any of my other great horror content that I have coming out starting in August and throughout the rest of the year. So, with that being said, I hope you guys are enjoying this review series. Hope you're doing well, and thank you for putting up with my stuffy head here and the way I sound. And of course, as always, stay scared. Bye.